Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode number 10 of the Worship Guitar Show. It is my distinct honor and privilege to be joined by Jack Higginbotham. He is the Chief Operating Officer at PRS Guitars, and we are going to be talking about the ESSI Hollow Body 2 Piezo today. It literally came out today. It is an absolutely lovely guitar. Jack, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, why don't we start off with exactly what a chief operating officer does from day to day? I see a lot of wood back there. So, tell
Yes.
me what you do, please.
Gosh, we wear many hats here. So what I do on a daily basis is pretty random. I've been around this company since pretty much since it started, about 35 years. And what I do is a bit of overview of the global operations. I was president of this company for about 15 years, so I still have tentacles that go into that element of the business. But for the past 4 years, I've been really focusing there and wanting to put a little more energy into it. And my passion really, I love business and I love everything that comes with business, but I'm here because I love guitars. So it got my hands way back into guitar design and just been a ball, a lot of fun.
And where did you grow up, and who were your musical influences?
All right, so I grew up in North Carolina, um, and I guess influences for me are really all over the place. So I was born in '62, so my paradigm of music was late '60s, early '70s, when I really came to be aware of what was going on musically. So all that stuff, the Beatles, Rolling Stones. When early prog hit, I really liked progressive music a lot and the technical aspects of that. So I was an early fan of Rush and King Crimson and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Yes and all of that stuff. So I grew up, listening to everything. My dad was into jazz and classical music, so I got hit with everything pretty much growing up. Had a lot of influences, and I
And
still love all that stuff. I love big band. I like swing. I like a lot of stuff.
that's awesome. I think I'm getting a little bit of echo in your speakers there, but
Okay.
it came and then it went. So we're just going to roll with it as is. But if I hear it act up, I'll holler. So
Okay.
my first experience of seeing a PRS guitar would have been about 1980. And at that time, Carlos Santana was doing this series of club dates in the San Francisco Bay Area, a little club called the Old Waldorf. And out he comes with this brand new guitar, of course, that no one had ever seen. As I recall, it had a little three-way toggle switch, beautiful gold burst on it. And as I recall, also kind of the zebra pickups on it. And that was kind of the beginning of the PRS experience, if you will. Can you tell us kind of, at the beginning of this thing, because there's a photo of Paul with all this bushy hair, a
Right.
very, and I should have grabbed it, but I wasn't thinking that I was going to go back that far. But
Right.
there was a time where you guys were the new brand on the block. Can you
Right.
tell us what it was like to, kind of be launching this thing, what the vision was then?
Yeah. So that's the Paul I met. Just kind of the crazy Brian May looking hair. Um, Tons of energy, enthusiasm, and a vision. The day I met him, I was actually playing in a band with the rhythm guitar player's name was Bob Tyson, and he was a machinist, and he was the guy who was making and building a lot of Paul's early machines before the company started. And that's how I met Paul. So we would do a gig at night, and then I would go to Paul's garage and help put together, machinery because I like to tinker with stuff and play with things. Um, when I met Paul, I walked away and told my girlfriend, now wife, I just met a guy who's different than anybody I ever met, and he's going to do something. You know, he had this drive in him that I don't think I'd ever seen it in somebody. He was so single-mindedly determined that he was going to do something in the world of guitars. And just being around him, even though nothing had happened yet, I knew that would happen. So I feel really fortunate that I was able to, when the company started in '85, I was able to be there a couple of months after it started and watch it happen. Now, my role in the beginning was, grunt labor. I was a minimum wage um, guy who came in with, I was a musician, but I had no experience building guitars or anything like that. I'd done construction work and I worked hard and I had a good work ethic. But um, we were just a group of people who recognized that Paul had a vision and loved his vision and wanted to be a part of that mission that he had. And that mission was basically, if you go to the early 1980s and look at what was out there in the world of guitars, it was not the high watermark of the electric guitars. And to a degree, the the art was being lost. It was
Mm.
eroding away, and the guitars just were. They looked the same, but they didn't feel the same. They didn't sound the same. They didn't play the same. And Paul is a lover of instruments, whatever that instrument is. And his drive was really to not let that be lost and to bring it back as best he could and participate in a revival of know, quality electric instruments. So, if putting it in that context and just imagining a handful of people together, kind of banding together with that, adopting his vision, that's what that was. And it was, I could romanticize it like crazy, and I don't think I would be exaggerating very much. It was like a mission. It was really a spectacular time, and it was scary because it was going into a world, that dude, it's an unknown brand at that point. So you're kind of going out and saying, "We have the answer. We have the better mousetrap. We have something that you ought to try." And when you have no fan base, that's kind of a scary thing to go out and do. But I think people recognized it, the dealers recognized it, the artists in the beginning were absolutely essential in speaking for us. And so it was energizing and it was consuming and it was untold I mean, nobody counted hours in a week. You just went in and worked until you didn't work anymore, and then you came back again. It was very different, very passion driven.
So, roughly, that's right around the Norland era for Gibson.
Yeah.
And so, what were some of the specific, if you will, weaknesses in the marketplace that you guys recognized? Because very clearly, and I've had a chance to sit down with Paul and talk with him, he's obviously a very bright and very present guy. There's not much he misses, if anything.
Yeah.
So my guess is you guys had analyzed the marketplace, not just like, hey, we're going to build beautiful guitars that sound great, but my guess is you guys had, you know what, there's some weaknesses in the marketplace right now. We want to leverage that to our benefit. So what were some of the specific things that you guys took notice of and aimed for and hit home runs with?
So, like, I think of it in different categories, but let's talk about visuals. So, and that's kind of a big one, even though it is at that moment, graphics were king, neon was everywhere, and it was about splashing colors and day glow orange. That was the era of guitar, and it was raucous and loud and different and bold and all of that. And we did something really weird. We came out and said it's about curly maple, and so our guitars had this lustrous beauty to them. The shape is, in my opinion, is genius. Paul had genius in him with that body shape, and the way the contours and the violin carve, the way that the horns work, the way the whole package is put together, just aesthetically was arresting to me when I first saw that final design. But the curly maple and the colors were it's so weird because it's everywhere now. It's just the norm, but that wasn't really what was going on there. So when we came out, we had a vintage yellow guitar, a royal blue guitar, and a scarlet red guitar. That was one of our first ads where the three, I don't know if you remember that, but it was like three guitars kind of crossing each other. And we never said much in ads. We just said Paul Reed Smith guitars, and there was an image, and the image kind of spoke for us. So the first thing is the visual. So, and that's a pretty big deal. Um, Neck shape is huge, and we're all kind of fanatical about neck shape. So great care has always been taken with what the neck shape feels like, how the fret approval, when you wrap your hand around the neck, is it comfortable? Does it feel like home? Does it feel familiar? And then it just gets into a litany of details that are from how accurately is a fretboard radius. When we live in a world of aircraft tolerances, which is a really, it's a strange thing. It's woodworking, but we measure in thousandths of an inch. So when we're leveling a fretboard or, sanding finish or applying finish, a great musical instrument is really not, it's never one thing. It's a compilation of everything. And the one thing that I've learned early on, and I believe it still, is every part on a guitar, there's no part that is not important because everything has some degree of effect on the tone of the instrument in some way or another, whether it's the material that's made from, how it is attached, the signal path of striking a string to where that vibration goes into the bridge, connects to the body, the way the guitar is put together and locked together. Every one of those pieces is mission critical. And so, what Paul has done and always has done is focused on each one of those individual parts, and kind of he will dwell on those parts, and in his mind he'll run analytics on, if it was brass it would do this, if it was steel it would do this, if it was stainless steel it would do this, if it was an alloy it will do that. And he'll run those things and say, I think the combination of sounds is, if you did this, this, and this, it would get you to this spot. And those early guitars were the proof that all of that thinking and planning and dwelling and really R&D, I guess, over a course of several years, that sum of parts made a big difference in the world of guitars, because when people picked it up, they may not recognize this tuning peg is working in a particular way or this bridge is working in a particular way, but what they hear and what they feel is evidence of um, the attention to detail in each one of those parts, if that makes sense. And that is the result of passion. And that really is why we survived, in some pretty bad economic times when we started up. That the late 80s and early 90s was not a great time to be, you know, starting up a business really. But the guitar stood on its own merit. And you know, I think our enthusiasm, Paul's passion for it, and the attention to detail that went into it is what made that happen. And we had a very, tenacious is probably the word. We had a very, like, we were very driven to not let things, little speed bumps, get us down. We were into acknowledging there will be issues and problems, and looking for the solutions for those problems, and not letting it weigh on us too heavily. But continuing on our mission.
You use the word not, and I'm gonna jump on that. My guess is early on in the mission, you guys said, we're never going to manufacture overseas. We're never going to do a lower line. We're going to be premium. We're going to be the Pinot Noir. We're not going to be the bucket wine that you could buy at the supermarket.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, here this amazing instrument is. Can you describe the path to SE?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the path to SE is kind of interesting. And you're right. We didn't really think. Here's the real bad truth about PRS guitars. We've never thought a whole lot about money, honestly. It's always been what are the guitars we're going to make? And the money has come as the guitars have come. But we've never really said, how are we going to make money? Let's go make these guitars. It wasn't what it was about. So there was nothing in our minds that said, after 5 years, we're going to start an import line and we're going to leverage the brand and blah, blah, blah. That just isn't what was happening. What happened was Carlos Santana, who, as you mentioned, that's your first experience into PRS. And it's a lot of people's first experience into PRS was saying, wow, what's that guitar that Carlos is playing? So and he continues to be just a wonderful ambassador and friend of the business. He's just been great. But in the late '90s, what happened was the Supernatural record is what happened, and Carlos came up with a formula and a recipe that put him on top of the charts in an astounding way. And he was touring heavily. He was engaging with his fan base deeply, and we had been making a signature guitar for him for years and years and years, obviously. But he came and he said to Paul, I'm out there touring, and these fans, and he was starting to reach this really younger fan base. It's like they want to play my instruments, and it's not affordable. It can't happen for them, and I want it to happen for them. So can you figure it out? Go figure that out. And um, there was a lot of discussions around how could that be? How could we make a guitar that was less expensive, that would hit a price point that he would be happy with? And in the end, the answer was we can't do that here. It's really not even possible to do that here. So it led us to say, okay, we're going to take that lead that I don't think was forefront in anybody's mind, which is we're going to manufacture something in Asia and we're going to bring it in. But when we do it, we're going to do it really differently. And so what that looks like is we said we want to have a guitar, and it was really about Carlos, right? So the first ads were Santana SE. That's what it was. The business segment was basically one guitar, the Santana SE. And so Paul and a guy I work closely with every day, Doug Shive, Paul and Doug Shive went on a tour of Asia, visited a lot of factories, and they were looking for a partner, somebody that would be able to understand our language, the language of quality and the language of tolerances, and somebody that had this same level of enthusiasm we did for the guitars. And we found that company in Korea, in Incheon, and that was World Manufacturing. And that was in the year 2000. And that got the ball rolling. So we made prototypes. Carlos, we had them build guitars. Carlos got the guitars, played them, and that began this whole world of the SE series. It expanded pretty. It's obviously expanded in breadth, um, but where it's most interesting to me is if you look at what we did, you're down the right rabbit hole. We didn't want to get too close to our own company. So that first guitar was a pretty big departure from what you saw when you looked at one of the guitars we were making in Annapolis. The outside perimeter was pretty much the same, but it had different inlays. It didn't have the same logo on the headstock. You know, it had a flat slab top. It was painted in different colors. It didn't have any curly maple on it. It looked like something that is similar to a PRS, but it was pretty far distance. Um, and so that got us started. And then I guess over years, you can see the transfer of where, and we were also very afraid of our own customer base kind of saying, "What are you guys doing?" So we didn't want to get too close to the flame. So there's a whole lot I could talk about that. It would take too long to probably get into it, but we learned so much in this. And there's a lot of videos that we've shot. If you look at, there's a video I shot last year, I think, of a factory tour in Mojokerto, Indonesia, which is the PT Court factory where we're building electric guitars right now. And there's a lot of details inside of that video and a lot of insight. And one of the things, and also we did another video earlier this year of a factory tour of this factory, which is all on our social. If you go to Facebook or go to our YouTube channels, you'll see all these videos. One of the things that I talked about in that video is this. We, early on when I build a guitar, if you pull the pickup out of the neck pickup out, there's a signature inside of there. If you built that guitar, you signed that guitar. If you sanded that body, you sanded it in where the bridge pickup cavity is. You signed it there. And signing the guitars was a big deal because number one, if there was a problem, you knew who to go talk to and who had worked on that guitar. But number two, you had a level of ownership and pride in that instrument. It's like signing your painting. You know, if you built that guitar, you signed it. I did a guitar for Al Di Meola in the late 80s, and it was such an honor. It's like, man, I did this, put my name inside of one of his guitars. And so when the SE project started, if you look at the back of the headstock of any SE that's ever been made, there is a signature on the back of the headstock that says manufactured by whoever the manufacturer is in wherever the city is, under license to Paul Reed Smith Guitars. And it was that kind of transparency that we wanted to have. We didn't want anyone to think that that was a guitar that was made in Maryland. We wanted them to know who it was manufactured by and where it was manufactured. And we were almost shy about doing it. And as time has gone on, that signature is still on the back of every guitar. There's no confusing that that guitar comes either from Asia or comes from the United States. But everything else, as this guitar that we're talking about tonight, the Hollow Body 2 Piezo, everything else has just, we've gotten more bold with not shying away from the advancements in instrument design and the execution of instruments and applying those things to our SE series.
You gave me an opening I'm going to go for. You're not going to be able to see it, but I know that you know this image. I'm going to share a screen. My apologies that you're not going to be able to see it. Oh, I've got to unlock. Give me just a moment.
Sure.
I'm going to go for Chrome, and let's hope it's going to go to the right window of Chrome selected. There we go. You're not able to see it, but it is that shot of a very young Paul at the workbench. But also in the background, there is a poster for Land of the Midnight Sun.
Yeah.
Which is, for those not in the know, coming back to you now, was Al Di Meola's first solo record. So the fact is that that poster is hanging, and I've never seen that before. I'm a bit of an Al Di Meola fanatic, and so
Cool.
That would have been 1978. No, 70. Return to Romantic Warrior was 76, so that would have been 76 or 77, very early on. So, you know, in many ways, the guitars, you know, I'm going to fast forward for a moment to somebody like John Mayer, and then we'll backtrack to Al Di Meola. In many ways, guitar players create, if the good version, like you're out on the lake, there's a wake of things that you can see from afar as they're kind of out there jetting away. What was it like to bring in somebody like Al Di Meola? I saw Al playing on the Return to Forever tour and he was blatantly playing PRS guitars. So, as a matter of fact, the Elegant Gypsy album cover, of course, he's playing a certain other guitar.
Yeah.
And so, it must always be kind of fun to kind of win somebody over who is, in many ways, the instrument that they play is iconic to who they are. Can you
Right.
unpack that?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Now, to really speak to that deeply, it isn't, that wasn't my world, and that was before my time. And I came in 1985 when the company started. Now, Paul was making guitars in the late 70s and doing all of that. When I came in, and again, I came in as I was cleaning bathrooms and sanding guitar bodies and unloading trucks. I was doing anything I could do to just help. So I was not at all instrumental in any of that cool stuff that was happening there, but I was in awe of it, as a person that was working inside of a company where, the people that we were working with and making guitars for in those early days, Peter Frampton, you know, Carlos, uh, Al Di Meola, Howard Leese, all those guys were just such giants in our industry in that moment in time. And the fact that so many of them were into what it is Paul was doing and we were doing, that was a huge, that was a huge confidence builder in us and for the market, I think. The market recognized, wow, these are these are names that I'm very familiar with, and they're hitching on to this guy, Paul Smith.
So the scale, like that takes a lot of cojones, chutzpah, whatever you want to call it, to go, hey, we're not doing the traditional thing.
Right.
Can you speak to the origin of that and kind of how that was just like, that's our shtick, that's that, and we're sticking to it?
Yeah. So now, is your question, ask your question if you don't mind in a slightly different way, because I want to make sure, are you talking about the scale as in the scale length, or are you
Yeah,
talking about the scale of the business?
the scale length.
Oh, okay. All right. So in a lot of ways, yeah, that, so think about a 25 and a half and a 2 4.5 or 2 4.75, and you've got these players that are playing with either slightly longer scale lengths or slightly shorter scale lengths. And then look at the early guitar, and even though people don't really think about it this way, there is, that guitar was made to convincingly split the coils to have better single coil sounds than humbuckers had, to do things that would appeal to both a single coil player and a traditional humbucking player. And that scale length is one of those things. It's like you don't want to alienate anyone. So, how do you do that? You try to find the mathematical match in between those numbers. And that's where that came from. Now, it the interesting thing is, in my mind, I'm 58 years old, but I can't help it. I have arrested development. In my mind, I'm still probably 30. And it amazes me that all of these folks that are 30, 35 years old grew up with that 25-inch scale length. And it's such their norm, it's all they know and it's what they grew up with. And so it's kind of neat to sit back and say, there's a generation that is the PRS scale length that is just as ingrained in them as a 25 and a half inch scale length was ingrained in a bunch of us.
If you could talk about one favorite experience in all the years at the company, or at least one that kind of immediately comes to mind that's a standout, what would that be?
Weirdly, here it is, I think. At least this is what came to mind. It's 2000 and probably 10. I'm sorry, I'm getting notifications and I can't turn them off.
Well, look who it is. That would be Lloyd Baggs.
Hey, Lloyd.
Hi, Jack. How are you?
Oh my goodness. I was about to tell a romantic story, but maybe I'll just pass on that now.
Oh, well, we do have a kind of a bromance going.
Well, we do. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Jack. Hey, Doug.
How are you? Long time no see.
Yeah, yeah. What a pleasure it is to join you guys.
Oh yeah, man. I am so happy you were able to get on tonight. I
Yeah,
kept meaning
me
to text
too.
you to say, is it you? Is it you? That's so cool. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Have you been hearing what he's been doing with this wonderful instrument?
Uh, I,
Pretty pretty your instrument too.
Yeah.
it's
Thanks.
so I that's a perfect opening. So music is a partnership much of the time, even if it's somebody like an Al Di Meola or a Carlos Santana. So what was great about reading Jack your email is like, hey, what do you think about maybe bringing the LR Bags folks in? And the enamored response was it just came off the digital page. So obviously there is a heartfelt sentiment, but also before you talked about a passion and a drive. So not everybody in this business is driven by the same thing, and that's okay. It is a varied business with varied results for varied reasons. But you guys seem to be very much on the same page. Let's roll the clock back a little bit. How did you meet, and how did you kind of connect?
Oh wow.
I
I'll tell my version, Lloyd, real fast
Yeah, please.
because you
Uh oh, the internet is not being kind to us. Okay, there we go. Up.
hollow body hollow body 2 piezo, and that's Lloyd Baggs's first bridge of working with PRS to come up with our first piezo. And this
Yes.
is
Well, how about that? Let's see. That means
Oh,
it's a
wow.
it's my crown jewel.
That's
Um,
great.
it's cool, but so in my world, I was production manager here
Jack.
at the time. Yes, Doug.
The internet the internet did something very strange. Can you uh-oh, we're having a little bit of connectivity. Can you back up and bring that guitar back, because I
Yeah.
think we missed that.
Okay. All right. Here's the guitar.
Awesome.
And like I said, it's a 1999 hollow body piezo, very early bridge. It's probably one of the first 20 of Lloyd's piezo bridges. And this is my guitar. Um, and I was showing that all of the guys that I worked with in 1999 signed the back of this. So this was the company of Paul Reed Smith Guitars at that time signed this guitar.
So awesome.
And I will say this guitar is magical. There are certain instruments out there in the world and they come across your hands, and this one is just an amazing guitar. This guitar has also been loaned out to a lot of people. It's on a lot of records. It's been you know, Switchfoots use it. John Foreman recorded his 4 EPs on it. If you remember December Radio, those guys use this on their records. Third Day used it on their records. So it's
Wow.
been around the block and been on a bunch of. It's been loaned out. It's a little
Amazing.
bended up, but it's made some great music. So it's real special guitar. But that's how
Amazing.
I met Lloyd, was when Krozak and Paul Smith and Lloyd Baggs got together and put all of their big brains in one big pot and stirred it up and said, we want to come up with a guitar that is convincingly acoustic and no feedback issues, and we're going to do it in this way. That was a complete revolutionary move, and I would yield the floor to Lloyd Baggs to tell his side of that story.
Uh, Mine was more like a bug on a windshield for so many years. I was the bug and Paul was the windshield. And so I had been trying to get Paul's attention for so many years. And every once in a while, I get a couple of minutes with him, and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, what do you got?" Oh, okay, cool. Oh, see ya. You know, and it was the advent of the I-beam that was the very first time that Paul actually took us as a company kind of seriously. And so, kind of around that time, we were also doing the X Bridge, which was our first piezo electric guitar bridge. And he had heard this, but I was still bird dogging him like I mean, I'd see Paul, I'd go running down the aisles, and it's like, hey Paul, and like he wouldn't, he was cordial, but it wasn't like I was getting anywhere with him. And then finally one day he just turned around to me and he goes, "Okay, let's do this."
That's
And so, I was like, "Yes, okay, finally." And so then he put me together with Win, which was, I think that was about the first time that I had met Win. And Win is this, oh my God, Win's like Einstein. Win is just like, he's one of those guys that you only understand about 10% of what he's saying. And he's so far ahead of us that I don't think he's even breathing the same air. But anyway, he and Paul had this idea of, well, if we analyze a D28 and get a spectral analysis of each of the strings' frequency response, and then we put each of those EQs on each of the strings on the hollow body, that might be a good start. And so Wynn shows up with this crazy piece of scientific equipment and all these instruments, all this kind of stuff, and says, "Okay, here's our graphs. Can you do this?" And like, here's the E string, and here's the A string, and it's just like every string was different, and every string was different, and so we had six different EQ. We EQ'd each string differently in the preamp, and then summed them together into a mono signal, and then put some further EQ on that. And the thing that was so cool for us is that this was like a take no prisoners kind of a operation. Like, you play with somebody like, like for instance, Doug, if you were playing with Santana, you'd probably play, I mean, you're an awesome player, but you would probably play a little bit better than you normally play. And so that's what I love about working with Jack and Paul and Win, is that, the not that I try to bullshit anybody, but sometimes you round things off. You can round things off a little bit, but like there's no oxygen with these guys. It's like either on or it ain't. And so, it was a scary deal for us. And also I knew, Paul was like a studio freak, studio fanatic. And so here we are saying, we got studio quality electronics, and it was kind of time to put up and shut up. So we did this preamp with 6 channels of EQ. It's all discrete. There's not an op amp in the thing. And the other thing that we did is Paul wanted to keep the magnetic pickups passive at all times, but he wanted to create a mix with the piezo, which had to be active. So, like a tone control on an electric guitar magnetic pickup, that's basically an active. It's like it loads the magnetic pickup in a way to alter the tone. So we couldn't add our piezo circuit to this thing in any way that altered the tone. so our then engineer at the time, who was another one of those like Gary. Gary's favorite saying was, "To a hummingbird, it's just flap flap." And so he came up with a way to mix the passive magnetic pickup with the active piezo with a mix pot, and that was another level of craziness.
Yeah,
And we did it all discreet. And the circuit board, well, it was the biggest circuit we've ever made to this day in terms of components. And but it's like, Jack, do you remember the launch party with Eric Sardinius and a number of those guys?
yeah.
I forgot where it was, but I was like,
Is that at the Grove, maybe at the Grove
yeah, yeah, I think so.
in Anaheim?
Yeah. So, developing the bridge itself and developing the piezo in the bridge was like a whole thing, because here we were shoehorning the piezo into this bridge. And Paul would say, well, the nickel screws, they sound a little bit different than the stainless.
Right.
And so you can't make you can't make this bridge can't sound any different than our acoustic bridge, our regular bridge, which on an electric guitar, it's an acoustic bridge.
That's right.
So piezo material is, I don't know what percentage of it is, but there's a lot of lead in piezo. So if you took a bridge and you added some lead to it, it could sound like a 10-penny nail hitting the asphalt on a hot day. So we had to shoehorn this piezo into this bridge in a way that wouldn't detract from Paul's idea of what a bridge should sound like. So
Right.
that was quite a project.
Which also means changing other component materials to accommodate. That's, we actually were talking about that a little while ago, Lloyd. You should have been on the conversation earlier. It's the sum of all those parts.
Yeah.
All those tiny little details. What's the material of the intonation screw as it is compared to, what any other part on the bridge, and they all play together and come out with the sum of this tonality. And that is what Lloyd and Wynn and Paul did. I thought it was brilliant, and I love the guitar. I mean, I truly cherish this guitar.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Doug.
So ultimately, early on, we introduced the thing at the show, and everybody's pretty excited about it. But like, Paul wasn't saying much. And then at that, I was like, oh man, I hope this is okay. And so at that party, at one point, Paul just walks up, grabs me, kisses me on the cheek, and says, "Thank you. It's brilliant." And I was like, "Yes, yes."
That is
so
lovely.
that actually was the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah, it's been a good 20 years.
Yeah.
All right, so I think I'm going to get you guys to take the bait on this one. Nobody really seems to want to talk about this. And my guess is the two of you guys in particular have a lot to say about this. Strings. Strings have an electromagnetic relationship with the pickup. They have a volume and transient and tonal relationship. You were talking about the EQ curve on the different strings. We're talking about the strings. We're not talking about anything other than the fact that the string is the thing that's producing the volume, it's producing the tone, it's producing the electromagnetic interference that's making the pickup respond as it does. I kind of noticed that there's some multicolored strings in here, which look like they might come from Farmingdale, New York, which would be D'Addario. So I would love to get your guys' take on this. It's like, because I had an experience. One of my favorite things about Paul, first of all, is he's not just a guitar guy. He's an amp nerd. He's
Mhm.
like,
Oh
and
yeah.
so Bruce, founder of Worship Musician Magazine, does the Tacoma Guitar Show. And the funny thing is that came back to Bruce and I said, well, all right, there's this beautiful white backed JTM 45, and then there's this Aryan thing, and then there was some third effect. And Paul buys all three of the things that I geeked out over. So he is aligned to understanding and deconstructing and looking at these things. Sorry, a little longer of an intro than I wanted, but the point being is that the string is, first of all, what your finger caresses when you create the sound.
Right.
How much does the string factor into your guys' equation? And let's start there or end there, depending.
Jack, I think this one's to you.
I'll start it. And you're right. We have a very long-standing relationship with D'Addario, and the we have found that, and D'Addario makes our proprietary strings also. So the strings that are on all of our guitars are, originally we used XL 120s back in the day and used nines, and we've pretty much gone to tens now across the board. The hollow body that you have has tens on it. I think 1046 is on. And the reason we like those strings is they work. They just work, and they worked for 35 years. They do well. They don't break. They sound good. They're incredibly consistent. And in a world of something Paul and I talk a lot about, I was playing a vintage guitar of ours last week. I borrowed it and took it home to my studio and recorded some stuff with it. And it was a pretty amazing guitar in that, it was very responsive, and it was very, and I'll say what it was, a 59 Junior. Um, it was very articulate, very responsive, and the way you attack the strings and the way you bend the strings, it was doing some really neat things. And I called Paul that night and I was like, yeah, I just played it, recorded with it, and it's pretty amazing. And we started talking about why it was amazing. And it gets into a thing that we describe as subtractive thinking. It's like a guitar can it starts out in a weird way. All guitars start out, if it's made out of quality wood and put together well, they start out on a level playing field. And from that moment on, it's what did you do to subtract the tone out of that
Mm.
guitar? And it's an analysis of subtractives. It's like, what did you take away that made that tone go away? What did you do to make it go away? Not what did you do to put it in it? What did you do to take it away?
Yeah.
The great guitars that we play around with, and what we tried to do with this SE, and you can see it inside of Lloyd's work inside of these bridges. It's about the signal path of hitting a string, and how is that signal translating from the string to the saddle to the bridge to the post to the well to the body to the neck, and how's that thing looping around, how's it connected to the pickups, and the connectivity of that instrument and how it's all locked together. That is the transfer of sound. If you've got two things that are sort of tight but not really tight, you've just lost a percentage of the purity of that instrument. And so this is not really answering your question, I guess, but the the string factor is the strings. In my opinion, I play heavier strings. I like them. It's bigger. It's mass. It's sustained. It's bold. It's round. I like big strings.
Yeah.
But the real thing is what's attached to that string. How's it hitting the nut? How's it wrapping around the peg? How's the peg attached to the headstock? How's the string coming across the saddle? What's the string break? It's all kind of basic physics, I guess. So uh, that's my kind of long-winded. It is a string, and strings need to be consistent, and they need to sound good. And Jim D'Addario has done a great job of making consistent products for an awfully long time, but it can't stand alone as a thing. It's got to it's that sum of parts. It's like Lloyd and I share a weird passion with cars too. So we talk when we see each other at trade shows. It's always a joy to see Lloyd at shows because I just love Lloyd Baggs and he's a cool guy. But also we get to talk about all this random stuff. But I like to build race car engines, and building a guitar is weirdly like a race car engine. It's like you can have, one element great. Your intake is working great. You've ported and flowed, and the engine's great, and it's flowing this air and at a great velocity. And if you restrict the exhaust, you've done nothing.
Yeah, you got
So
to bump them.
you gotta get all the pieces together, and that's what guitars are about. That's my take on it.
Well, your take and my take is like, I think you're actually, Jack, you're the only person I've ever heard it yet talk about subtraction and a guitar in the same sentence.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not a string, Doug, I'm not a string geek. I don't care. Give me round ones, flat ones, square ones, nickel, um, uh, dead ones, live ones, phosphor bronze, whatever, any gauge you want. What happens, it's what happens, like on an electric guitar, you've got magnetic pickups, they interact with strings, they interact together. That's a whole subject. But for me, my string, our life starts at the end of the string. The end of the string
Right.
contains everything that the string has, as opposed to maybe a rhythm position or a lead position, which is a snapshot. But the end of the string is called a node. It's a place that doesn't vibrate. It's like a harmonic, but everything goes there. And so in this subtraction thing you're talking about, I look at the string as the pure source of energy, regardless of what it looks like, what color it is, how old it is, whatever. It's the energy source. And the guitar, what you hear from the guitar is the signature of loss. A resonance is a loss, and a loss allows the energy in the string to not stay in the string and to go drop into that guitar at that frequency, and then it gets turned around and it comes out as a loud thing. So it's the guitar is the sum of the parts make up what's like what we call the signature of loss. So when we're designing a pickup, we're just trying to be a conduit. That's it. Just a conduit, because it's the guitar that's doing the job. We just want to get out of the way and let the energy get absorbed through the pickup. The pickup's deaf, dumb, and blind. And so it's just reading the loss. And so what we try to do is make our pickups be more body responsive than pure string pickups. So they're just more sensitive to the loss, and hence they're going to sound more acoustic.
All right. With that kind of a
Jack,
Nice.
doesn't it always blow your mind to hear something so pretty coming out of something you made?
That's just crazy. It's
Yeah.
just crazy. You did. So can I kind of go down a slightly? I want to tell one quick story,
yeah.
which is the guitar you were just playing, I think. So it's a pretty recent thing too. So 4 years ago, we were going to Anaheim to a trade show, to the NAMM show, and our a lot of people listening probably are familiar with Brian Ewald, who's our product demonstrator and a wonderful guy, fantastic guitar player, worked with us in the 80s, and said, what he really wanted to do was play guitar, and he left and he started touring and did a great job of it. He's just a fantastic guy and a great talent. But I was sitting next to him on this airplane, flying to the West Coast from the East Coast. and I was just starting to get really deeply involved into the SE series. And I had this idea that was kind of wacky, which was I love my hollow body piezo. I love my bag system. I love that guitar, and it's such a nice tool. I would love to make that guitar as a part of the SE lineup. And Brian, I think, is the first human that I spoke to about that. And I said, "Is that crazy? Do you think this is crazy?" And he looked at me and he said, "That is the number one thing I get asked at clinics is when is PRS going to put a piezo into a guitar that I can afford, you know?" And I was like, all right, so more people than me thought that, and that's good. And I went to the show, and Lloyd and I always try to connect kind of early in the show. It's kind of become a thing now. I think we're like trying, yeah, it's like we try to find each other at the show. And I asked him, I was like, "And do you think this is a thing? Do you think that we could figure out a way to make that work within the SE series?" And he was like, as Lloyd will, he's like, "I want to think about that. And yes, you know, we can do that." And over the course of the next year, it was just an awful lot of fun. Tommy and Ryan and Lloyd, and just talking about how to take this bridge that is this on this Cartier guitar, and how do we keep all of the good of it but make it work inside of a guitar that can hit a price point. I think this thing's streeting at like $1,549 or something like that, and it's just what you get for that money, and that convincing acoustic sound is just insane. And so that, I guess I just wanted to say that 4 years ago, it was a kind of a weird thought in my head. I talked to Brian Ewald. He convinced me it wasn't insane. And I ran to Lloyd, and we started this conversation. And years later, today we've launched this guitar, and I get such a kick on, I go to our forum, I go to Facebook, I go to Instagram, and it's like, to me, we launched this guitar years ago. We've been working on it for so long and not able to talk about it, but it's so cool for people to go, "I can't believe they pulled this off. This is so amazing." And they really appreciate the hard work you've put into it, and we've put into it, and the guys at Court and Dalian have put into it, and collectively how we've worked together to, I think, make a very unique instrument in the world today. What this thing does at this price point is just not, it just isn't happening. And Doug, you asked me right when Lloyd came on, it was like, what's my fondest memory, you know? And my fondest memory of the story I was going to tell was about S2 and the recession, and how we developed a guitar line that helped us to survive a recession. But really close in there is this project, because it's just been a series of discoveries for over 3 years now, of finding little magical bits and pieces of, you know, a puzzle that can go into this instrument that, you know, if you're a gigging musician, if you're a worship leader, like I'm guessing a ton of people watching this right now are leading worship and playing in worship bands, to have an instrument that can play acoustic convincingly and roll one volume and put another volume on and go right into electrics or blend them together is a wonderful little tool in the arsenal. And I'm going to keep talking for just a second, because when Krozak, this happened to me with the original hollow body. I was playing at a charity gig, and I was playing that hollow body, and I was playing a duet with another acoustic. It was a D28. And when Krozak was mixing sound at this thing, and I'm playing the hollow body in acoustic mode, this other guy's playing acoustic on an acoustic.
It's like Picasso painting your house.
Yeah, yeah. And he was trying to bring that other guy up in the mix, but he kept bringing me up, because he was bringing what his ears said was the acoustic guitar. It was our hollow body. The hollow body sounded more like an acoustic guitar to his ears, and he's got some ears, than the Martin did coming through his pickup system. So it's that degree of accuracy of reproduction of sound that we've done together with Lloyd, and Lloyd's done with his team. That's just I'm sorry I'm talking so much.
Ah,
I get
love
excited
it.
about it because I think it's cool.
Thank you, Jack. That's awesome.
All right, so do you guys think it's harder to make an acoustic guitar sound like an acoustic guitar amplified? I know this is going to sound crazy, but I got to ask it. Than an electric guitar amplified sounding like an acoustic guitar? Is it harder to actually make an acoustic sound right front of house than an electric with? And by the way, do you say piezo or piezo? I gotta know.
Oh yeah, we started on that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what end of the country you're from. Uh, it's piezo, piezo, piezo. I've heard everything, so I really actually don't know.
I deferred to Lloyd. I asked him that years ago, and I was like, I'm not sure what to say. What do you say? And he said, I say piezo. And I was like, I'll say piezo too. So that's just what I say.
So
But
go ahead,
answer your,
please.
but answer your question. I do think it is more difficult to make an acoustic guitar sound just right,
I deferred to
amplified.
Lloyd. I asked him that years ago, and I was like, I'm not sure what to say. What do you
Yeah.
say?
All right.
We got somebody joining us, looks like.
We do. Let me see what. All right, we've got something happening here.
And I also, while you're getting that right, I agree with Lloyd too. I think dialing in an acoustic sound through a piezo, at least through the ones that we're doing in a live setting, and we've done that recently. We've gone to a club, dialed in our acoustic guitars, and thrown hollow bodies in there, and the hollow bodies kind of win on live sound.
Yeah, they're amplifying an acoustic guitar is something, of course, my company's been trying to do since our very beginnings. And in a way, it's like miking a speaker. I mean, an acoustic guitar is a speaker,
Yeah,
and you're trying to amplify a speaker, and it's like acoustic guitar. Even in the name acoustic guitar, there's a bit of a catch-22. It's an acoustic guitar.
yeah.
And so amplifying that, capturing that is, you know, it's something. I've got a lot of scars on my forehead from running into the brick walls.
There we go.
The I-beam you were talking about earlier, that was my first experience. That's where I found you, was installing an I-beam in a friend's guild.
Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the studio legend, Dave Cleveland. Look at this. Oh, look at our matching guitars. Look at
Yes,
that. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for starting without me. It's been a busy day, and I'm glad to be here. I really am. I've been listening to you two talk, and I'm just so blown away with your knowledge and your passion for what you do. It comes across in the instrument. It really does.
Well, that's awesome. Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, great to
Nice to
see
meet
you,
you
Dave.
too. Both of you.
And Dave.
Hi, Doug.
Hey, Dave. And the unfortunate thing is, Dave plays just as good as he is nice, which is really annoying. So let's segue, if you guys are good with it, straight into Dave. So look, you get paid to sound great. Like that's just the gig. Like you don't get asked back unless it doesn't matter how nice you are. If can I say suck? If you suck, they ain't having you back unless it's like, hey, we have some toilets that need to be cleaned and we could use some coffee. Could you hurry up with that? So can you describe your take of the nuance of this instrument and, kind of all the things that when you think of guitar and you think of this instrument, the things that appeal to you and why?
Well, the first thing that appeals to me when I pull it out of the case and put my hands on it without plugging it in at all, it just feels good. It's the profile is great. It just makes me want to play. So that's the first thing I look for. If it doesn't have that out of the case, then I don't know. I don't really want to go any further than that. But I pulled this out and started playing it. I'm like, this is like, I know you can't really hear it there, but it's like it plays fantastically. So that's the first thing. And it stays in tune. That's huge. I mean, I can be the greatest player in the world and play the greatest part. And if I get in the track and it's completely out of tune, it's like it's not helping me. So the guitar stays in tune. And I tell you, I do a lot of uh, contemporary Christian music, worship music, and things like that. And so this is going to give worship leaders a huge advantage that they struggled with. Well, should I lead with electric or should I lead with acoustic or what should I do? And so this is going to give them the ability to get a great electric sound through an amp or through some kind of a Kemper or whatever that is. But then simultaneously you can run the acoustic side of it completely separate, and the sound man can pull up electric and acoustic in the house, and it's just this beautiful big sound that they can get now. And so I've got several of my friends that I'm like, you guys need to get this because you've been talking about doing electric and you've been afraid to make the choice. I'm like, right here is your acoustic volume. You're set. You're ready to go. Actually, I've got both hooked up here. Sorry you can't hear it, but it sounds great in my house. So, but so for worship leaders, this is a great choice. I can't even believe the price point on this. I don't even want to talk about that because the guitar feels, I have this lovely guitar right here, which is a masterpiece guitar. It's so good. But I gotta say, this guitar feels like it costs a lot more than what it does. And I mean, I know that's important to a lot of guys, especially leading worship and things like that. They just might not have the budget to get stuff. This guitar feels like should cost a lot more than it does. I don't know if I should say that, but it does.
I like hearing you say that.
I'm really okay does.
With that. I'm okay with that.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
To be able to reach, the big one, mostly handmade. And there's a lot to be said for that. But when you have to translate your design to somebody else to make it,
yeah,
things can get a little diluted. But it's like a car. It's who's driving the car, right?
Mm.
It's like a machine is great. A machine's just a machine in any different than a chisel. You need to know where to cut with a chisel, and you need to know where to cut with a machine. And if you've got the vision and know what you're doing, I think that's the biggest advantage that PRS brings to this project is they know how to make a guitar.
Yeah, that's right.
I gotta jump in real quick and say this too, because you can know how to make a great guitar, but you've got to find somebody who wants to help you make that great guitar.
Yeah.
And the thing, it's the partnerships, I guess, is the sum up comment. The partnership that we have, there's a guy named DS Kim. He runs this, Lloyd knows him, he runs this factory that is Court Dalian, and it is amazing. It's an amazing factory, and he's passionate about what he does, and he's excited to work with PRS. And without him and his passion and enthusiasm for the instrument and wanting to go places that he's never thought about going before and making guitars that nobody's thought about making there, if he wasn't a willing partner, none of this could happen this way. So it does take the vision of an instrument, but it takes this team. And this is a team that's all over the world coming together to pull this thing off. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat.
Speaking of all over the world, coming from Franklin, Tennessee, we have the one and only Jeffrey B. Scott, touring musician extraordinaire, worship leader, great guitar player, great guy. Now, the funny thing is that I'm going to briefly share our bromance story, which actually is the antithesis of Lloyd and Jack. Is that every NAMM show, like, we have this text at the beginning of the show, and Jeffrey reaches out to me and he's like, "Hey, we got to get together." I was like, "I'll see you tonight And like 4 days later, I'm like, oh, dude. So like, so I just have to fess up because it's true. Jeffrey, welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been fun. I've been watching you guys for the last hour, and I gotta say, wow, very cool stuff.
Can we get you to come up a little bit?
You know what? Probably yes.
Pretty please. I'm
Hang on,
telling the
see if
guitar
that'll-
player to turn up. How about that for a first?
I know, right?
Yes, finally.
By the way, Dave, while he's doing that, you can send the JTM 45 offset over to my way.
Oh, you think?
Jeffrey, how we doing here?
I'm checking one thing.
Okay.
Hey, can I say one other thing that I feel like is a very strong way that this guitar is going to be used? And that is, I went to a session the other day to write, and I was like, I had the ability while I was at the session, I had the engineer plug in the acoustic and the electric side, and I was able to write and be inspired by electric sounds and acoustic sounds. And I only had to bring one guitar.
That's awesome.
And I tell you that just that, you know, as a writer, I need to be inspired. And it's like, man, if I can walk out of the house, grab this guitar and go to any studio, most everybody has some kind of DAW you
Yeah.
can plug into and get sounds. And I gotta say,
I am so happy, Dave, to hear you say that word, because that's a word that we use a lot here, and it's the inspiration. It's like inspirational instruments. There's music inside of these things, you know, and it's like they're conduits. That's
Yeah,
the way it's
exactly
like.
right.
A good instrument is just a conduit for what is in your head to be
Yeah.
able to easily come out of that head, out of your heart, and into your hands
That's
through
right.
that guitar. And it's the weirdest thing. So, there's a guitarist in Chicago. He's from the Isle of Man, and I love him to death. His name is Davey Knowles. He's a fantastic singer and player, good friend. And I was talking to him about our parlor guitar, actually, that launched a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I sent him one, and he played it, and he was like, "Man, it's like I opened it up, and there was a song in it, and I just recorded it immediately."
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about, Dave. And I think that's cool from your perspective. It's like, I love that there's something in your soul that wants to come out, and we make an instrument that is the conduit of that for you.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And thank you. And just to say, go along those lines, this acoustic pickup in here sounds amazing. I mean, it's so, like,
Go,
I played
Lloyd. Go,
like
Lloyd.
today I played acoustic almost all day. That was my role. And I brought this guitar. I had to play a couple electric things. And so I brought this as my electric. And then I brought a bunch of acoustics, and I played acoustic all day. And I got home and I started playing this, the rig. And I was like, that's right. This has all that sensitivity and that feel, you know, and I don't know how you do that. That's beyond what I understand, Lloyd. So whatever you're doing, it's working.
Well, thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. We just, same thing. We just try to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Like, really, that's it. You know, it's like, it's like, you know, guys on the board at a show, right? The sound guy.
Yeah.
You never notice them until something screws up, right? You know, and
Point.
that's like, you know, that's all we're trying to do is just be the guy at the board that nobody turns around and goes, you know, and just kind of like be the conduit, and you know, just not put up too many roadblocks for your inspirations. You know, it's really, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And don't let him minimize it, because I tell you what, I'm sitting here looking at my 99, and I'm looking at the new hollow body that's sitting next to it, and I'm looking at the way the switching is different between the two. And that's another conversation Lloyd and I and Paul had like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's Lloyd's, you know, your contribution to this guitar is large, man. And I don't want you to minimize what you're doing, because the way that this works I've grown. I was very, very accustomed to the guitar. I've been playing for 20 years, but now I prefer Lloyd's approach. After a couple of decades of thinking about how it could be, his approach to deleting that mini toggle and the mix mag aspects of the original guitar and making two discrete controls doing the acoustic, which Dave, you can show how that works if you want to. But that did a couple of things, and I think it helped clean the sound up as well, or it helped with
Oh,
the signal path anyway.
yeah,
Uh,
sure. You know,
but
really, our entire circuit design philosophy, Jack, is just get as much out of, you know, the straight wire with gain idea
yeah, yeah,
is just to get as much junk out
yeah,
of the middle of it between the your hands and the speaker. And
yeah,
so it's like that. So when you came to me about this project, it was like something I was like super passionate about is being as simple.
yeah,
The simplest solution for us is always the best solution.
yeah,
And so this project was, you know, the original guitar was just a blast, and then this has been a blast in a different way
yeah,
because the challenge was, let's not make it, it was it okay, we have to acknowledge we were making this to a price point.
yeah,
And so, how could you do that without compromising quality? And
yeah,
on our end, it's the same bridge, it's the same piezo that's on the $4,000 guitar. It's exactly,
Yeah.
it's the same. The only difference is that we're summing it to mono and we've gone really simple. And so we were able to somehow take all those different EQs and kind of like, you know, put them in a blender and come out with something that sounded, you know, I think pretty decent. So
Awesome.
Oh
it
man.
was
yeah,
it was the simplicity,
yeah,
the circuit that allowed for it. And like with the big with the big instrument, some of the unsimplicity had to do with all the little adjustments
yeah,
to for string balance and voicing and stuff like that, which is fantastic. But
mhm,
over the years, we've gotten better and better at quality control and keeping the bracket between the balance, string balance is getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
Mhm.
So from a string balance standpoint, there wasn't as much need for adjustment. Now, I mean, the adjustment on the big guitar you can use for expressive purposes and voicing the instrument to your liking, which is an advantage over the less expensive guitar. But from a string balance and pure performance standpoint,
yeah,
that piece wasn't necessary anymore. So, you know, we've learned, you know, Jack and those guys and their team have learned so much. And then, so, you know, really the secret to this was just getting to making everything as simple as possible.
yeah,
Speaking of simple as
We've got the same
oh,
discrete, same studio quality, all discrete circuitry in the SE as we do in the hollow body. There's
yeah,
just a lot less of it.
Yeah.
speaking of simplicity, and I'm gonna kick it off to Jeffrey in a moment, though. I'm gonna complicate things, and I'm gonna put a fly in the ointment. You know, I think this really needs a five-way switch that you can load five different IRs in there. It's too bad, Lloyd, you guys haven't been messing around with IRs
Yeah,
because
that sucks,
it.
doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in piezo mode, just to be able to pull up five different IRs, that'd be kind of cool. Gosh, Jeffrey. So,
Yeah.
so with that said, you know, the funny thing is there are a lot of guys that rip with a PRS, but I think it's a blue PRS. So Jeffrey used to be Lincoln Brewster's right hand guy, but Lincoln actually let him rip from time to time, and there's a video of him online just destroying this PRS, and it's some of the tastiest hit you in the gut and the heart simultaneously guitar playing I've ever heard.
Mm.
Jeffrey, you know, kind of tell us a little bit about kind of how PRS has kind of helped you find your voice and kind of been, you know, a contributing factor to your successes.
Okay. I'll say this: the first time I ever saw PRS, I loved listening Jack to a little bit of this earlier, and just kind of hearing a little bit more of the the underground details, and stuff of how things started. But for me, my introduction to the brand was uh, probably seeing some stuff in stores and going, "Wow, that's a gorgeous guitar." No joke. When I remember when that era of like the on the guitars and like the like Mighty Mouse guitar came out that I think Kramer did or somebody did
Yep.
like that. That it was like, this was the pinnacle. And and I remember seeing PRS stuff and going, wow, that is really gorgeous. I started kind of my electric journey was really more of a Strat guy and kind of leaning into that stuff. But I started looking in different I started looking for different tones and different voices and that kind of thing because literally everyone around me was playing strats. And so it was that whole, okay, how do I stand out in this thing but still, kind of meet a need and still kind of find a space that's not occupied, sort of like the way Paul started the company in a lot of ways. And so for me it was that, like, looking into that kind of stuff and going, okay, well, how can I find some middle ground here? And I had done everything from the Strats to I had an EVH Wolfgang guitar at one point, like loved it, and this kind of found like a really neat spot. As a matter of fact, I sold that EVH guitar to buy my first PRS.
Did you
So
really?
yeah, I did. And I remember talking to somebody and going, look, this is what we have. These are the two choices that we have, and one of them is whale blue, and it was like, yeah, that sounds like me. That sounds like me. So I sold that EVH guitar to get that first custom 22, and never looked back, honestly. And so it's been one of those things that for me has been a unique. It's had its own place, a unique thing, and I think I toyed around with so many different guitars and so many different body styles of guitars and things like that. But it's one of those things that, like, all of it meets me right where I need it. And so yeah, it's been a long time. Jack, when did we meet? Like 2006, maybe, something
It's
like
been a
that.
while. Jeffrey and I have been, yeah, we've been bumping around for a while.
Yeah, but yeah, the actual, now, you may not know this. I don't know if I've told you this, Jack, but the very first PRS that I ever took to like a show was a Hollow Body 2,
Ah,
and
I
that
didn't
was
know
the
that.
first guitar that I ever played, like, for a long time, and
Yeah.
spent some time with it, and I was sold, obviously. But yeah, as a matter of fact, one of the things that I'll call out to your memory, Jack, early on, I asked you if you guys were gonna do like a custom 22 with a piezo pickup.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, like, this is meeting a lot of needs for me.
Yeah.
Making me really
It took a
happy.
while, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it did. It did. I know there's a lot, and I've gotten the chance to visit the factory a couple of times and see how you guys do things there in
Yeah.
Maryland, and that's been one of the most impressive pieces to me. Like, as I talk to people, as I talk to guys who play strats and tellies and all kinds of things, that if they're not seeing their guitar tech often enough, things get out of whack. And
Yeah.
I just do not. I have the luxury. I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff because of the way you guys make your guitars. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
That's you know, the fundamentals. We were talking with Doug earlier, drying wood, making sure your platform is stable. It's all these really kind of boring things, but they're all essential. If you mess it up, if you get impatient, very early on, I think Paul Smith probably wanted to shoot me because he came into the wood shop. It was probably 1985 or 1986, and I was making necks. And I've always been a guy that wants to get as much done as possible. And I had decided there was a relief cut that was a 45-degree angle that we put on the back of neck blanks. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to put that on there. I'm going to bypass that operation and I'm just going to go straight and carve a neck. Paul walks around the corner and it's like, because every one of those things, every little piece of the recipe is important to the stability of the instrument, which, Jeffrey, that's what you're talking about. An instrument that stays in tune, It doesn't break. It's just made to be a stable platform. That's why I love Lloyd's stuff, because it doesn't break. And that I-beam we were talking about earlier, I love that thing because it was simple to put in and it sounded amazing. And once you put it in, you never touched it again. It was bulletproof.
My worst nightmare is having a piece of equipment go down when somebody's doing a show.
Oh yeah.
That's like that. Sometimes it scares me to go see people that are playing our equipment. Because is this going to be the time when something breaks?
That's going to be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that happen? Because I have.
Well, I thought it had. I thought it had happened. I was invited to Bonnie Raitt's birthday party at UCSB a number of years ago. Jackson Brown and a bunch of their cohorts are there, and I'm sitting in the audience, and somebody comes out playing something that has one of our, and it starts to go down, and like in the middle of the show, and I'm like sliding down in my seat. I'm trying to get as small as humanly possible. Well, thank God it turned out it was just his cable.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, it's like he's not playing, the show's not going on. Everybody, because they knew me, everybody's looking at me, and I'm like,
it's Lloyd's fault.
Yeah.
It's like, so I take that stuff really seriously, and we do honestly do 100% testing on every single thing that goes out of our door, even every single pickup that's in all 6 of those pickups.
Yeah,
we have a computer tester that we test the pickups for output and all those other parameters, so they get a set. It's a set, and it's going to be right. And so
Lloyd's shop is amazing. Actually, that is such a fun place to go. That is just like Wonderland. It's cool.
All right, I'm gonna ask a question, and we'll also see if we can't. Bruce, if you're still there, do me a favor, text me so I know that you're still there. I'm going to ask a question, and I think everybody here is going to know it. I'm curious how many people on the stream are going to know. What is the most out of tune note consistently on the guitar?
Well,
let's give everybody a moment.
All right.
But I think Mr. Cleveland is going to be there. I think Jeffrey B. Scott is going to be there. But the funny thing is that it's one of the most shocking experiences, and not that I have any doubt that Jack and Lloyd will know as well. But it's one of the most shocking experiences when you kind of go, you mean that's pretty much out of tune on every guitar? So a minute ago I tested it with the ever present guy here, and I'm like totally in tune. I guess I just gave it away here, and I'm not seeing anything. So it's the C at the first fret on the second string. That note is flipping sharp on pretty much every guitar, but not this one. And the nuts cut wrong. It's just one of those things. So guys, I take it I gave the answer away, but I kind of fingered the note like an idiot. Gentlemen, how about that C at that first fret on the B string? Does that not just drive you out of your mind?
Me, not so much, because everything I play is out of tune.
So I have a regular thing in sessions. I work with a piano player named Gordon Moat yesterday, and of course they have a piano tuner come in, and so the key is you never blame it on the guitar. It's, man, the piano. Is it getting cold in here? I think the piano shifted. You don't.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't reveal any of our secrets of what's wrong. But
did you guys
this one's in tune.
Did you guys ever hear that thing that James Taylor said about tuning a guitar?
No.
He said for a guitar to be in tune anywhere, it has to be a little bit out of tune everywhere.
Yeah, it's tempered.
Yeah.
There's a constant give and flow on the tuning. I mean, that is my life. Every day I'm tuning all day long. I mean, this morning when we were getting ready to start tracking, I started tuning and the engineer turned me off until I got done because he just didn't want to hear any more tuning. I'm like, dude, this is my life. I have to tune.
Yeah.
But you do learn to whatever tuner you end up using, you learn to find where it all settles in, where it sounds in tune in all the different chord shapes. And that includes when you have to capo up, then you have to retune with the capo on and get it settled in again.
All right, hang on a sec.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That's in tune up and down the whole flipping neck in all those
Yeah.
inversions. Like that's
Yeah.
like out of the box.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and I've had this here for a minute. That's
Yeah.
nuts.
It's great.
Like guitars don't do that.
No.
Well, you
Tolerances lead to that.
yeah, Doug, you said the word nuts, and the nut is why you can press down on that note on the B string and it doesn't sharp on you. And to get a nut right
Yes.
is the most highly refined setup skill any luthier can have.
Yeah.
To do a nut right is like it could easily take you an hour to, if you're just starting from scratch, you don't have gauges, you don't have, you're just setting up a guitar to do a nut right. And then you make one file mark too much and the sucker's buzzing on you. And, but when you get that nut where those strings are as low as possible,
Yeah.
that really, that's one of the reasons that guitar plays so well. And, for a factory to care that much,
It's great.
it's a lot. Setting up a nut is a big deal.
So on that, tolerances are huge, specs are huge, the factory setup is huge, but Paul, I will say, is an incredible setup guy, which was kind of his gig. Paul Smith
Right.
was like, that was his thing. He was building guitars, but he was fixing guitars and he was setting up guitars. And he's masterful at it. He set some of my guitars up, and it's really like, look, when it's done at its highest level, it's just sort of an amazing experience. We also do not rely solely on the factory to set these guitars up. We do each guitar individually once it comes in. I don't think everybody knows that, but we actually unbox every guitar, set every guitar up. If the nut needs to be recut, we recut the nut and make sure that it's
That's awesome.
thing. Yeah,
Wow.
so it's basically a miniature version of our final assembly goes on inside of the SE series upstairs, and every guitar gets done.
That's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Wow. It feels great, man.
The guys are good. I always said Paul Smith was the best setup guy around, and what he did was taught us what the spec was and what the standard was, and we figured out how to do it really fast.
Uh-huh.
I have a quick question. Gentlemen guitar callers, I want to see if you have this particular setting set in your audio settings. And if you don't, this will benefit anybody that teaches or does anything over Zoom. To the right of the little microphone, there's an up arrow. Select on that menu the audio settings. Inside audio settings in the lower right-hand corner, there's an advanced button. Select that advanced button, and then there's a little blue box that you can select for show in meeting options for enable original sound from microphone. Super important to do that.
Yeah.
Then disable the first two pull downs for suppress persistent background noise and suppress intermittent background noise. And then in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little red dot. Exit out of that. And now in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, you should see something that allows you to toggle between turn off original sound and turn on original sound. It's kind of like high pass filter. It's the opposite of what you expect it to be. If it says turn off original sound, it's exactly where you want it.
So on the echo cancellation, you were moving kind of fast there. Do you
Oh,
leave
I'm
that
sorry.
auto?
I'm sorry. I had realized I was going to be providing further support. With great pleasure, sir. So the echo cancellation I leave to auto.
Okay, so disable auto.
That's right. So the others is what it is they perceive guitar as background noise. So they apply a codec to it. So it basically you'll be playing and all of a sudden the guitar will just dip down about 10 dB and sound like all you hear is the. So you guys should be rocking and rolling. So that's I learned that from Jeff Slingluff, the brilliant guy, formerly at Line 6, now the genius behind all the genius stuff that Boss is doing. Gentlemen, by the way, I love the binding.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question and then I'm gonna shut up here. Jack, I am curious about this whole laminate thing because it's become a thing in electric guitars, and so the top wood is a 5-ply laminated maple, the top veneer is a figured maple, the middle wood is mahogany, and then the back wood is 5-ply again laminated maple, and the back veneer is again figured maple. So can you explain in layman's terms what that actually means, please? We lost your audio. Jack, come back. It wasn't just me, right? Somebody else makes
I don't hear it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, rats.
Come on, Jack, come back to us.
Baby, come back. We just got pulled off of YouTube.
Yep.
It was those advanced settings.
Oh no. Oh, Jack, do me a favor. In your lower left-hand corner, over the microphone, you might have accidentally just hit mute. That's probably it. No. In a worst case scenario, if it doesn't want to come back on, call back in, maybe? Because we do want it. I mean, you look great, but it would be nice to hear you.
Okay, you guys, just so you know, all this talk, I want to go play. So, Jeffrey, I'm coming over. We're going to jam.
I love
Sounds
it.
good. Sounds good.
So,
Come back to us, Jack.
what has it been like, as players watching kind of the PRS invasion? I mean, well, actually, one of the things, Dave, actually, I want to let me not kick sand in anybody's beach towel. I had heard that there was a guitar that kind of that single cut that kind of came into your life, and you're really loving that guitar. So I realize that's not the theme of tonight, but like Bruce had mentioned, the publisher of Worship Musician magazine, Jack.
It's low. I heard a little bit.
Hey.
There we go. Yes.
Am I back?
Yes, Jack is back.
Dark side of the moon. Dark side of the moon. It's terrifying.
Wow.
Oh,
Scary.
gosh.
It
So,
was really scary.
Jack in space.
Jack in space. So Dave Cleveland was going to rave about this single cut because I've heard you say, well, actually, I can say it without insulting anybody. You said, the quote was that I heard you say, it sounds as good as any of the 59 bursts you've played. Is that accurate?
I owned a 58 gold top for a while, as part of a little college plan, if you will. And when I got that the single cut, all I can think of is Howard Leese described it as chalky, and it had that old school articulation in the note. It wasn't super high output, so the amps you could just get all the tone out of it, and that's what an old 59 burst does. It has that dry, real immediate kind of sound. In the single cut just nailed it. The 594, unbelievable guitar. I play it every day on sessions. It's just go-to, and so I love it. So that's all I'm going to say about it, though.
laminates and plies and all of that?
Yes, you're a little quiet right now.
I do.
Yes, we do want to hear about the laminates, please.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Am I?
Your audio's a little
You're
low.
you're about 50% lower than you were before.
Man, I don't know what's happening. I didn't do a thing. While you guys were turning knobs, I wasn't touching anything. So
Okay.
I'll just get really close and talk loudly.
That's perfect right there. Sorry.
All right, that's okay. You just got to really look at my eyes. But so as far as the construction of the guitar goes and the laminate goes, basically bent top guitars are either made with 3-ply or 5-ply. That's typically what it is, and most are of a 3-ply. What we found is this thing creates a box. I don't want to get too deep in it and completely bore you guys to tears, but this guitar from a construction standpoint mimics what it is that the guitar we've been making for 20 years does, but instead of carving the inside and carving the outside to create the shape, this is bent on a mold. But it, like all of our hollow body guitars, there is no internal bracing in this thing. So the guitar,
Oh,
quiet.
really?
You may not be able to hear that so much, but this thing is like a drum. And there is a lot going on inside of this guitar.
Yeah.
The plies, the amount of plies and the material that is in the material of the plies between the veneers has a large impact on the way the music presents itself, the way the guitar, the note presents itself. If you play one of our hollow bodies that's all mahogany, that's a 5-ply mahogany. Compare that to the maple, it's a completely different instrument. So the materials, like we were talking about earlier, whether it's brass or it's steel or it's maple or it's mahogany, all of those things have a bearing on the personality that comes out in that.
Jack, can I comment on that?
Yeah.
That you're able to extract the character of the various different woods that you're using in that says so much, because most plywood, it could be pretty much anything. It could be ply du jour, and no matter what you throw at it, it still sounds the same.
Yeah.
And for you to be able to create a ply that you can actually hear the qualities of the different wood that you put in it, that's really quite an accomplishment.
It's neat because the instrument itself is sensitive and dynamic, and so therefore it creates a platform that will let those personalities shine.
Right.
The differences come out. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of making the platform stable, making the instrument locked together well. Because if it's not locked together well, those nuances get lost in the mud, But when it's locked together well and presenting itself, you can hear all those differences. The fact that this has an ebony fretboard on it, it makes a difference. It's not just that it's ebony, it's like that creates a sonic balance that lets that string, do its thing and the body to talk in a different way. It's all important.
Yeah.
And I like that somebody commented on the curly maple on the binding. I personally wasn't even sure that could be pulled off, but I love the way that this guitar looks and feels and the execution of the binding. I know you can't see that, but binding on the fretboard and the body. But the most impressive thing is watching them do the curly maple binding on the F-holes.
I was just looking at that. That's amazing. So
yeah, it's crazy.
It's great. They're so good. I mean, really skilled. It's really cool to see them do it.
Are they pre-bending that, Jack, or is it? So they're pre-bending it and then kind of tweaking it as they go.
Tweaking it as they go, and then the accuracy at which they mask that for the staining process. It's really a thing to behold.
That's a crazy. Finishes is why I got out of guitar making.
It's been the size of many a fine man.
Finishes and sanding. That's that's a whole deal.
Yeah.
And literally to get that level of detail and finishing on this instrument that you've done is really amazing.
They're great. They're fun folks to build guitars with. It's nice.
Jack, what about I was going to ask two questions about the guitar that I'm always concerned about on guitars is the tuning pegs.
Yep.
Like they're solid, man. They're like
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah. So the tuning pegs are actually, I'm not going to reveal all the secrets, but I
Okay.
will say those are hot rodded pegs.
Yeah.
And
It's
we've
great.
learned a lot about, slop accuracy and again, transfer of tone through accuracy and making a part. And once we know, here's the problem with PRS. Once we know something, we can't unknow it. So, and Lloyd knows Paul, it's like, yeah, once Paul knows that there's some component that's so insignificant, but it's inside of this guitar and it's street at $499, he doesn't care. We're going to get rid of that and it's going to be better now. So yeah, we try to, the tuning pegs, I like the ratio, I like the accuracy, I like the lack of slop in there.
Yep.
And that's all about the materials that are chosen that are inside of that casing.
Yeah. And so the next of the two questions, the pickups on these.
Yeah.
I haven't done any, super research. I'm more like, does it sound good? Yes. But what's going on here? Because they are very, very clear and warm sounding pickups.
I really love hearing your feedback, man, because there's been just a tremendous amount of effort that's gone into this guitar, and I love that you're noticing it. It's cool.
Yeah.
Those pickups, they're 5815Ss. So the 5815 are like a pickup that PRS that we developed, Paul developed probably, 2015 is when we did it, which is why it's called that, 5815. And it was a breakthrough of understanding how old PAFs, what made them special, and hundreds and thousands, honestly, of hours that have gone into analysis on really understanding how to voice and master pickups. And that these pickups are a result of that. So these pickups are actually made in a shop with a guy I know real well that's in Indonesia. They're made in Indonesia, but I've flown there probably 10 times, worked with him on how to build the pickup a particular way. And a lot of those details that we talk about, he's paying attention to these pickups the way we pay attention to building pickups in the US. And again, an excellent partner, a curious mind, just an intelligent soul who loves doing excellent work. And the result of that is being able to literally mass produce something that used to be a needle in a haystack to find one from 58, and it's really fun, man. It couldn't be more fun.
And a great choice in the in the balance. I haven't touched anything here, but I really love the balance between the two pickups right out of the box. It's like, because you have just a single volume, but the choice that you've made in the setup, to my ear, is perfect. So, because I love that middle position.
Cool.
You got
that's good to hear.
Really nail it.
And then you take that balance and blend it with the piezo with
done.
And that's where it just gets really crazy.
Yeah. There's so many sonic options. It's
really
crazy.
are. It's so variable. And I actually really prefer this. We were talking about the switching earlier. I really like having the two discrete outputs without the blend like is on the other guitar, because it gives you this flexibility of overdriving the magnetics but keeping the purity of sound.
Exactly.
So dual outputs, or as Lloyd puts it, if you need to, you've got the ripcord. He calls it the ripcord. The way he designed this thing was, if the battery goes dead, you've got the ripcord, and that's just magnetic in, and it goes completely old school, bypasses everything, and you're still off the races. It's really a nice system. You done good, Lloyd.
Yes. I mean, if you love creating like really atmospheric spatial things, like you were talking, you get this beautiful clean sound, then you add, stereo delay and reverb, and then you blend in the piezo pickup just a little just that extra sparkle on the top. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Brian Ewald, if you look at his demo videos of this guitar, he does that same thing. He's running magnetics and he's actually using the piezo as an effect just to put that sparkle on the top. It doesn't even sound like a piezo, but it makes the magnetic sound like it's ethereal. It's awesome.
I love it. I'm way into that kind of stuff, so it'll be used a lot in that capacity. Thank you.
Look forward to hearing how you use it. That'll be cool.
Yeah, and I just got to say how proud I am of our team here in our company. You know, I've been blessed with the company of so many people that are more talented than myself, and you know, I just try to like stir the soup, and kind of get out of the way and let these guys run with it and be responsive to these wonderful projects.
What you got, Doug?
my Bruce doesn't let me call him my boss. It's really kind of weird. My supervisor was just saying, hey, you gotta.
Nice.
And the neck pickup.
Yeah, it's money.
Yeah.
A great guitar.
Nice.
Crazy great guitar.
I hear people play like that, and I'm honestly so glad that I can't, because I never would have ended up in this business.
Well, the great thing about all of this is that what makes it so special. Thanks for that, Bruce. The boss was like, "Come on, plug in the electric. Come on." we all get a chance to we're all part of something, and that's really one of the neatest things about what we get a chance to do, and it's very special. If you guys made guitars and nobody played guitar, it would be kind of not good if you made piezo pickups. So speaking of pickups, I'm gonna thread that needle. I'm gonna go back to the 5-way switch. There we go. Come on. So Lloyd, you guys debuted some piezo stuff. Some IR stuff at Winter NAMM. So we came by the booth, and it's kind of like there's some big stuff happening here. So my guess is at the point that you guys are kind of like, hey, we're in this. This is a serious thing. So I know there are certain things that I can't ask and won't ask, but I will say as we kind of future cast. To tell you the truth, it was who made the big speakers on the stick?
Bose.
Bose. So Bose was really early on with the mic modeling. So you could dial in any mic and you could have the mic modeling. I'm like, okay. And I was like, okay, well, in the next 2 or 3 years, we should see the same thing happening with the acoustic models. And I've been surprised at how long it's taken for this thing to happen. But since you guys have released a product in the marketplace, my guess is you guys are rather excited about being able to assign any voice to your guitar, and especially since you mentioned earlier, in some ways, piezos on an electric guitar seem to translate electronically a little bit better. So could you care to stoke those coals a little bit about kind of where you see IRs in the future of all of this on acoustic IRs, that is?
Yeah, sure. So, an impulse response was originally created to measure a room, right? Impulse. You do, that's it. Put a mic in a room, it hears all the reverberations and stores it, and then you can impose that as a filter onto whatever you're playing, reverbs, things like that. And like the electric guitar companies like the Kempers and the Fractals, and are doing such beautiful, beautiful work on it. And uh, there's a lot of people that are being able to create impulse responses for acoustic instruments in the studio with a lot of expensive studio gear, and it's quite an art form. Um, and there's a couple of different directions, and the direction that we chose, like one of the things with the SE guitar and the hollow body, is that there's an integrity to what's coming through the piezo side to the instrument. You can feel it in your hands. You feel it in your breastbone. There's something about the way the instrument vibrates, and then if it comes through the piezo and it comes out the speaker with this integrity to the instrument,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very satisfying musical experience.
Mm-hmm.
So the direction we took was not to overlay or imbue another instrument with another instrument's sound. So, for instance, you go into a guitar shop and you buy a OM38, and you download an impulse response of Eric Clapton's OM38. Now, I would love to own that guitar, but I didn't buy that guitar. And that impulse response put onto my OM28, there's a there's a little bit of a disconnect, because what's coming out of the speaker isn't integral to the way the instrument's vibrating and making my hands feel and making my body feel. So there's just a tiny little bit of disconnect there. So the approach that we took was to replicate the instrument that our technology is listening to.
Ah.
So we're not, so if we've done our job well, you can put our impulse response on another instrument and you might get lucky, but you may not. And so if you're not using our impulse response with the instrument that it was created with, which was the whole point of our device, is it's just really replicating your guitar. But we're using the smartphone as the replicating device. So it brings it more democratizes the process so more people can access it. Everybody's got a smartphone, and so the idea was basically just get more of your guitar into the PA rather than rather than trying to clone somebody else's. Now, how do you apply that to an electric guitar? I'm very excited about that, but I'm trying to find some way that we can do it with the same type of integrity. So I'm scratching my head here about it, and I do believe that we'll probably be going there, but we haven't figured that one out yet. But I'm very excited. We're sending our first beta tests. Thank I mean, COVID has been so horrible for so many people, but there's been a few silver linings, and one of the silver linings here is we took that thing to the NAM show a little more half baked than maybe we should have, and so this has given us the time to really work it out and get it totally solid. So we'll be going into the fall. We'll have it available in the fall for purchase, but it's been quite a learning experience, and
Wow.
very exciting.
So, hey, Doug, I I have enjoyed this immensely. This has been a wonderful evening, and I can't believe 2 hours have just gone by.
Wow.
I'm getting notifications on my phone. I'm actually having a meeting with Korea in 1 minute, and they're in the waiting room.
Annyeong.
So this machine never sleeps. That's another thing that's
Uh,
cool about this project. So I am going to have to say goodnight. And man, I really love that we were able to get together and do this. I really appreciate
It's been
seeing
great.
all you guys again.
Great
Dave,
meeting you, Jack.
great meeting you, and Jeffrey seeing you again, and Lloyd, Doug, just great to see you guys. So I really appreciate the opportunity. I really hope, I hope people appreciate this guitar. I think as a worship instrument, it's going to be a very useful thing. I think
Yeah.
bringing acoustics
Yeah.
out of a feedback situation, the flexibility of having an acoustic and electric together. I look forward, Jeffrey. I want to hear what you've made this thing do.
I can tell you, I sat down with it the first day and wrote a piece with it, specifically with the acoustic and the
Send
electric
it to
thing.
me, man.
I
I'd love
will.
to hear
I
it.
will.
Love to hear it.
Yeah.
So hope we've made a good tool.
Yep,
I
great
appreciate
tool.
Lloyd. Love your partnership. So just thank you guys a ton. Really appreciate everything. Wish we could stay on all night. I could do this all night.
This was fun. Thanks, Jack. Good luck with Korea, man.
Yeah, I'll tell him you said hi.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
See you guys.
Well, gentlemen, I'm kind of famous for these 3-hour things, and I think it's late enough on the East Coast, and you guys have been so generous with your time. Lloyd, a pleasure to get a chance to hang out multiple
Yes.
times over the course of today.
Thank you.
It really just your passion is quite clear, and this guitar sounds great. One of my favorite things is I love movie music where there's some little acoustic guitar passage that has had an impact on my whole approach to how I attempt to bring acoustic guitar into worship. I never really try. I don't want to be the shaker, right? I want to be playing notes that are big enough that like the PA can't ignore them. I know that sounds slightly selfish, but at the same time, this instrument is absolutely amazing, and the electric quote unquote side of it is something that I enjoy greatly, but the acoustic side and the nuance of it is very very special. So brilliant job.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much, and our team, and I'm just got to be like the luckiest guy and the most blessed guy ever to be kind of a sucky musician but still be able to make a livelihood, and it is a thrill to be with players of your level, and just to be able to sit and listen to you guys play. It's just like it's fantastic. So I'm a blessed guy. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it. What is and I had what is the name of the IR system that I saw at NAMM? What was that called again?
Oh, well, the IR system that you saw at NAMM was called Soundscape. Now, unfortunately,
Uh-oh.
a company that makes a outdoor underbush speaker system for architectural installations got a little upset with us about that. So naming something is the worst. So anyway,
Yeah.
we thought we had done due diligence, and turns out somebody came out of the woodwork, and okay, it ain't worth fighting. So it's now, we had Soundscape with voice print technology, and now we're just calling it the voice print.
Awesome.
The voice print
cool.
DI is the current and we actually were able to register that, and it passed the 30-day opposition period. So I think we're free to run with that one now.
That's excellent. Well, I'm excited to endeavor.
That's awesome.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Dave Cleveland,
Yes, sir.
you have been endeavoring on some. You got a side hustle going.
Well, I guess you could call it that. I've got a couple things that I do, but the newest thing is I've had people for years wanting me to teach, and I don't have time really to teach because of my schedule in the studio. But what I've done is I've created an online video resource for people that want to learn from me that is available. It's davecleveland.com.
Awesome.
Go there, and I've got a lot of warm-ups because I went looking for warm-ups online one day and I couldn't find just a bunch of warm-ups, just to mix up the muscles, on the when you're playing. So I've created a bunch of warm-ups,
I'm looking it up right now.
And it's CLEVELAND.com. Dave Cleveland.
.com.
.com.
That's correct.
Awesome.
So thanks for saying something.
With
Appreciate
pleasure.
that.
With pleasure. I'll be warming up. I'll be warming up to you, Jeffrey B. Scott. So you're a touring guy. So this has been an interesting season. So
It absolutely has. And my side hustle as a travel agent has gone really well during this time too.
Oh.
So
if I had the cricket sound that I could actually pull up here, some of these streaming applications.
yeah. It's been amazing. Oh gosh.
Well, but I've heard you've been really working on your warm-ups.
Well, apparently I am going to get better at my warm-ups now that I'm going on Dave's site to check them out.
So, what do you that English?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Tell me about it. It's like I saved the best for last.
That was amazing.
What do you do when you're because touring has been your bread and butter? Kind of how you making the most of this time?
Well, honestly, one of the things that popped up simply because we were all stuck at home, Lloyd, one of the things you mentioned was that because you have this time, this kind of extra space and being able to work on a project. Well, I've had a couple of those things come along as well and gotten to do some of the virtual band stuff where things look like this, but we're all getting to play and I'm getting to play with people that normally would be hustling on the road back and forth across the country, you name it, they're doing it. As well as what I've been able to do with David Cook and all the things that we've been kind of involved in. And so we were about to go on a European tour for about a month, and that has gotten postponed and now pushed back into August. And so we're getting to the place where as long as everybody feels safe, we're going to get back to some of that. Interestingly enough, to draw it back to the guitar, one of the things that I've gotten to do, got asked by some guys here in town to sit in with them on Saturday night to do a live show. And the guy was like, I've tried to, go easy on you on guitar parts, but you probably will have to bring a couple of guitars because there's some acoustic stuff and there's some electric stuff that we want you to do. And I was all
Done. Done.
One and done.
One guitar is going to the show on Saturday. So it's really going to be a nice tool to have because of that. I got to use a custom 24 that had this system in it, and same kind of deal, fly date, and had to have an acoustic thing for one song. And it was like, am I going to bring a whole other guitar just for this? And so I've loved to be able to have that as an option. But yeah, it really is pretty fantastic. But, God's been good. We've been able to do some things like that to still stay creative, still do something a little different. This lighting and stuff, and being able to use one of the things, Doug, you and I've been harping on recently, the aux from UA and all of that. Like it's been amazing to be able to use that to get this stuff to sound great and easy. And my mix guy is going, wow, how did these guitars sound so great? It's like, well, I mean, here's one reason, and there's another reason, and just making it so easy on everybody. But it's certainly had its challenges. but we've been hanging in there and loving the opportunity to get to sit down with some great gear and great people along the way. So yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, first of all, before we get out of here, I always need to make sure that I remind everybody that this is brought to you courtesy of the hard work that goes into Worship Musician Magazine, and this is an outreach kind of to engage people in the virtual space. And if by chance you're not currently partaking of Worship Musician, it is always free. You can go to worshipmusician.com, and we love what we do. We're madly passionate about helping worship musicians get better by Sunday, and not just the musicians, but the entire team. We're one magazine with 6 sections, and we love what we do. worshipmusician.com. This show streams every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and it ends sometime after that. We do not. The neat thing about this is we kind of, in some way, we knew this show was coming because of the release of this guitar. We don't necessarily know every week exactly what we're going to do the following week, but that's kind of nice. The flexibility means that it's not scripted. But tonight it's been such a pleasure, and I just want to again thank everybody.
Yes.
And a big thank you to the folks at PRS that sent these guitars out. It's just been such a blessing. And thank you for hanging out and watching. We're ultimately the magazine is about serving worship musicians and teams. So the privilege is ours. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, good night.
All right,
And
Dave,
God bless.
Jeffrey, Doug,
Boy,
thank you
Jeffrey,
guys. Pleasure.
Doug.
Look forward to meeting you, having a beer, a cup of coffee with you one of these days.
With
Sounds like a
great
plan.
pleasure. And slow is not that far away. Sorry, that's California slang for San Luis Obispo. So to be continued. Gentlemen, thank you so
All right.
much, and God
All
bless.
Good night, guys.
Hey, everybody.
Cheers.
God bless. Bye.
Bless you too. Bye.